This is the account of the death of Jesus. The last bit of time that Jesus was on the cross. Matthew 27, verses 45 through 54. From the 6th hour until the 9th hour, darkness came over all the land. About the 9th hour, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? When some of those standing there heard this, they said, he is calling Elijah. Immediately, one of them ran and got a sponge. He filled it with wine vinegar, put it on a stick, and offered it to Jesus to drink. The rest said, now leave him alone. Let's see if Elijah comes to save him. And when Jesus had cried out again in a loud voice, he gave up his spirit. At that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook and the rocks split. The tombs broke open and the bodies of many holy people who had died were raised to life. They came out of the tombs, and after Jesus' resurrection, they went into the holy city and appeared to many people. When the centurion and those with him who were guarding Jesus saw the earthquake and all that had happened, they were terrified and exclaimed, surely he was the Son of God. So we have the account of Jesus' horribly painful death. A man who had been scourged, who was certainly bloodied, grossly disfigured by this point, on the cross, yielding up his spirit. And when he did that, we're told in verse 51 that the curtain of the temple was torn in two. I want to think a little bit about this, why it's important enough that this would be listed with this painful, agonizing death. And so this is a picture of the temple as it was when Jesus was alive. You had different courts for different people to go into. There's a place for sacrifices. And then there's a tall spot. And that was where the holy places were. Inside that building, you had the holy place, and then you had the Holy of Holies. That you had to be a Levitical priest just to go to the holy place. The Holy of Holies, only one person went in there once a year. This was the place where purification would happen. This was the place where all the rest of the sacrifices would be based off of. But only the high priest could go in there once a year. The curtain that divided those two places was huge. It was 30 feet wide, 60 feet tall, 4 inches thick. Not exactly a living room curtain. Some have said that 2 horses pulling in opposite directions could not have pulled this curtain apart. It was that thick and densely enmeshed. In many ways, you might as well have hung a sign on here that said, access denied. The Holy of Holies was where people thought about God's presence dwelling in a special place. That was where you would really get to know God directly. But no one went there. When Jesus died, that curtain was torn from top to bottom. Something that wouldn't just happen accidentally while somebody was cleaning, not something that would just happen by happenstance. It was for a purpose, that we can be close to God. And like the youth message this morning, when she had somebody outside the door, I think that's how we often just really think about God. He's there. I'm glad he's there. I can't always really hear him very well, but he's around. But when we think about the cross, we think about that curtain being torn, and we can actually know God, know him personally. When we pray, we actually talk with him. And I think that a lot of times we get satisfied with a lot less. We get satisfied with somehow being denied access to God and just assuming that's how life is. But one of the reasons why we celebrate this weekend is because the cross brings an opportunity to know God in such a real and powerful way that goes beyond what we sometimes just accept as everyday life. I hope that as we continue to go through the service this morning, that we think about how we can know God, how we can know Jesus Christ that personally because of his sacrifice on the cross. Colossians chapter 2, verses 13 through 15. And you who were dead in your trespasses and the uncircumcision of your flesh, God made alive together with him, having forgiven us all our trespasses by canceling the record of debt that stood against us with its legal demands. This he set aside, nailing it to the cross. He disarmed the rulers and authorities and put them to open shame by triumphing over them in him. This passage sounds a lot like our resurrection. That we have gone from death to life. The passage talks about how we were dead in sin, we were dead in separation from God without a hope of eternity, to hope of eternal life. Our resurrection is tied with the resurrection of Jesus Christ. This passage talks about a record of debt that was nailed to the cross. When a person was crucified, what they were guilty of was nailed above them. The crime that they committed. So Jesus, above Jesus' head, he had a plaque that said King of the Jews. That was what he was guilty of in the eyes of the Romans. And each person would have something that was their guilt. This passage says that in reality, what was above Jesus' head, this kind of goes along with what Linda just sang about, was our record of debt. The wrong things that I have done, the wrong things I've thought, places where I've lacked faith, that was above Christ's head. When I read this passage, I think about this record of debt. That the guilt that I quite often carry around, the painful things that I continue to carry, aren't mine to carry. Hope you're wearing your safety glasses. This idea of a record of debt is that I have done things in my life that make it so I cannot earn my way to heaven. I cannot do enough good things to make it so God says that I'm a good guy. The only hope I have is forgiveness. And the forgiveness that comes to me isn't something that I have done or earned. It's because Jesus died on the cross and paid the penalty for my debt. A debt that's more like, I don't know, the debt of Brazil or something. Something that's so fantastic it can't be repaid except by Jesus Christ. This morning I want us to think about what are those things that distance us from God now that we do not bring before him? What are those things that distance us, whether it's sin, whether it's life circumstances, whether it's hurt, maybe it's the loss of a dream, maybe it's doubts about God, maybe it's being unsure about things in the Bible. Whatever it is that distances us from God, we have the opportunity to bring it to the cross and nail it there. Because Jesus' death was to release us from that debt. During this time, we're going to sing a chorus. And while we sing that song, I invite you to write something down. Ellie's going to pass out some cards. And I would like you to write down something that separates you from God. And if you want it to be personal, you can make it a code word, or you can fold it up. But I'd like you to write something down that, whether it's a thought, whether it's something that's been done, or doubts, or something, own that and write it down and physically nail it to the cross. Because it's incredibly powerful for us to realize that we don't carry that now. We celebrate Christ's death and resurrection because he paid a price for us that we don't have to carry anymore. And if you'd rather not nail it, if you want to just put it at the foot of the cross, if you want to just press the tack in, however you'd like to, leave it at the cross to remind us what Christ died for. Matthew chapter 28, verses 1 through 10. After the Sabbath, at dawn on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to look at the tomb. There was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven, and going to the tomb, rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothes were white as snow. The guards were so afraid of him that they shook and became like dead men. The angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here, he is risen, just as he said. Come and see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples, he is risen from the dead and is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him. Now I have told you." So the women hurried away from the tomb, afraid, yet with joy, and ran to tell his disciples. Suddenly Jesus met them. "Greetings," he said. They came to him, clasped his feet, and worshipped him. Then Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee. There they will see me." A passage accounting Jesus' resurrection. It's fascinating to me that it is afraid yet filled with joy. It's an interesting blend of emotions. Afraid. Why were they afraid? Afraid of what people might do to them? Yeah, you sound kind of crazy if you think somebody that was dead is alive. Yeah, quite often we think of angels as these floating sorts of things, and it's pretty clear that they're always scared. Like there's fear that comes with angels. There's something about them that's very powerful. So there is afraid, and yet there's joy. So why do they have joy? Yeah. If your friend who had been dead is now alive, usually that probably bring joy, maybe a little bit of fear because it's not the usual sort of events. And we know that looking back, we can also see other reasons for joy that we've been talking about, that there's closeness, that there's forgiveness. But I think what this brings out, this mix of fear and joy, is that it's real. How often do we go through something really intense in life? Some experience that is amazingly intense. Usually we end up with like a blend of emotions, a blend of reactions to this amazing thing. And that's what's happening here. These women who have gone to the tomb to pay their respects to a dead Jesus get there, and he's no longer there. It is so real, the impact is so deep that they're overwhelmed with these almost conflicting emotions. I hope that happens for us. This weekend we celebrate that Jesus died on the cross for us. We celebrate that he rose again. Is that something that we can just sit down and say that was a good thing? If we truly believe that that's real, if we really believe that somebody who is dead and is alive again, that should shake us pretty deep. That should change how we live. That should change what we think about and our expectation of how close God is and how real his forgiveness is. I hope that when I leave here today, that I reflect on this very real thing that shakes me. That I'm no longer the same as I reflect on the cross.